So we'll continue our talk on Jainism, the path laid down by Mahavir centuries ago. And as we talked, the definition of Dharma is to know your Swabhav, to know your Swarup. Swarup, Swabhav becomes more or less the same thing, because if you really look at in a practical way, Roop is something that you define by your eyes, what you see, kind of darshan, Bhagwana darshan, like that. Swabhav is emotional, how you feel. So the question is, where does the Swarup and Swabhav and all that meet? Why it's one and the same thing? Because outside there is duality. The outside world is perceived by five senses. So each sense will fill in its own part of the universe into our head. And the total picture comes at the end of five senses input, not just one sense. So whenever we visualize, we call it darshan. When we have feelings about the outside world, we call the bhav and all those things. So, but as you go further back into your own inner mind, as you keep transcending your mind and your intellect and your bhav even, and then you reach to a blank spot, basically shunyata state where everything merges. Your experience becomes the experiencer. So far, you were the experiencer, but the outside experience was coming in through your five senses. So you were the subject, outside was the object. The subject and object were two different things. But now as you go backwards, and as we talked earlier, you fold back onto your own awareness where the outside world doesn't exist. First you may think that your awareness and you are two separate things, but after a while you realize that you are the awareness. So subject, object, everything gets together. So Swarup, Swabhav more or less becomes the same thing. Swabhav is a beautiful word. Bhav we already know, Bhav, Vichar and Kriya. Bhav is one of the strongest weapon that we have to really achieve things in the outside world, to really make a difference in your life. If you have Vichar and Kriya, it's really dull and boring. Try doing any work, but if you put a little bhav in it, it changes the whole gamut of the whole thing. Whatever you were doing so far, if it is done with bhav, the whole outlook of your life changes. I always give an example, 2 o'clock in the morning, if you tell your wife that the guests are coming, can you cook something? You say, well, forget it. But if you say your son is coming, then it's another story. Bhav changes everything. Imagine that kind of bhav, if you have it for everything that you do in life, how beautiful the world will be for you. Forget about the rest of the people might benefit for you, but that's besides the point. So bhav is a very powerful weapon we have. But when we're talking about swabhav, the bhav you can manipulate and start putting it into your own soul. The shunyata that was looking like shunyata and nothingness starts becoming alive. All of that, all of a sudden, that awareness becomes meaningful, because then you start realizing that bhav that you have attached. So far, your bhav were attached to the material things, either people, objects, or situations. But now, all of a sudden, that bhav is folding back into an infinite space, and it starts picking up the characteristics of the infinite nature. So far, with the bhav, say you had a lot of love for your son, but when the bhav folds back into your own swabhav, now all of a sudden you realize that you have infinite love for everyone, and you didn't even ask for it. It just becomes your nature. So bottom line is the nature of your soul is infinite, and being that it is the source from where everything came out, there is no reverse flow flowing back into the swabhav. It's like urja we talked about, that urja is something that just springs from within. So there is no receiving. So at that level, receiving becomes meaningless. But if you really look at our day-to-day life, nobody really loves anybody. If you really think about it, the closest it might come, which is totally unconditional love, is mother's love maybe. But even that is conditional. Mother will love her children, but anytime is anybody else other than their own children. the love starts faltering away all of a sudden, my child versus that child. So it's really, but the only glimpse you can say comes close. Husband says that, okay, I love my wife, but he likes the things that she does for him. It's ultimately he loves himself, because he says, okay, these are the things that you do, that's why I love you. But not realizing that ultimately it's the love for himself, because these are the things I like. So we call love is the most misused word in the world, but the real meaning of love is just the flow. Love is an experience. Love is not something you can do to someone or receive from someone, let alone. Because we know only material life. We know only give and take. Say, you give me love, I'll give you love. Then it loses its value. It has to flow, but that flow has to be felt from within. So putting bhav in a day-to-day life, also you can see the power of bhav. Even taking the weeds out from the garden. You might hate it. One of the most hateable thing to do in the gardening is to take the weeds out. And it's a lot of work. You hate the weeds and all that. But while you're taking the weeds out, if you just put a bhav to it and appreciate the resilience of that weed, the tenacity where all your plants are dead without the water and with a lot of heat, the weeds are growing on its own. And they are freely enjoying their existence. Sometimes they even have beautiful tiny flowers sitting there, and there is a micro environment being going on. Once I was taking the weeds out from my driveway, and pretty much a lot of places I had to put the Roundup. It's really not worth taking it out. So you put the Roundup. All of a sudden, small, tiny weeds. They were like beautiful flowers, purple and pink flowers, and it had its own environment with the male tentacles, female tentacles, and the bees were small insects were eating on it. And I said, there is a micro miniature world going on out there. So whenever we have a little bit of power of observation, we realize that there is a lot of things happening outside which can remind us of our true existence. But instead of that, we just hate it. So bhav, we ultimately want to fold into our own soul, and that's how we reach our svabhav. But our problem is that our bhav is attached to the material things, and that's why we can never come out of those things, because that is where our focus is. There is always, when you go deep into meditation, you're always gonna come across a sweet spot, I call. Sweet spot is where going anything further, you are connected to the outside world. Going backwards, you're folding back into your inner awareness. So that sweet spot, you just have to find it and then act on it and go backwards. But our mind is always going outside. The material pleasures have become so much more important. Once I was in a hospital and riding on an elevator. So one couple walks in. They're hospital employees actually. They were not related to, but one lady was carrying the bucket of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and the man was carrying the donuts. So obviously they were going to have breakfast. And so one other patient walks in, and while the elevator is going up, the man and the woman are talking. So what did you do last night? He said, well, we went to eat Cuban pizza, and oh, it was so delicious, and this and that. The whole conversation is running around food, right? And then that lady who was the patient actually was riding along, and our turn came in. I was getting off at 4th floor, and so suddenly we realized that we never asked her that where she wanted to go. He says, I don't care, I want to go to Cuban pizza. She says, since my son has married a Mexican girl and she makes such a delicious Mexican food, and after a certain while, food becomes your everything, right? What do I say? I said, yeah, right. So he says, I don't care where the elevator goes, I don't care where I go, I want to go to Cuban pizza. So food becomes obsession for us. And that becomes our only source of pleasure. So life becomes the only source of pleasure for us. And because the foods gives you the happiness. So alcohol gives you the happiness. This thing gives you the happiness. This person gives me the happiness. So we're always running between happiness and unhappiness. Sometimes we realize the happiness becomes unhappiness. Unhappiness becomes happiness. But it's all state of mind. Mullah Nasruddin started a business with his friend, a Pandit. This was many years back. So they decided to buy wholesale stock of pants, and they filled the whole warehouse with that. They put almost their whole life's earning into the pants, right? So now the warehouse is all loaded up. Now we're just looking for buyers because they got it at a very good price, but the buyers are just not turning up for almost 2-3 months. There is nothing is selling, so they were getting really desperate. And meanwhile, the rent for the warehouse is going up. They say, "Wow, this is all money we had, and we're putting everything in. What is going to happen?" All of a sudden, one salesman comes in, and he looks at the merchandise. Says, "Looks good. I'm going to buy the whole thing." I say, "Wow, really?" He says, Yes, really, no problem. The only thing is that I am a salesman. I don't call the shots. I have to go back to my home company, and I'm going to give a description of whole things, and I'm going to buy the whole thing. So I'm going to go back and send you a telegram. Once you get the telegram, so if I am not buying it, then only I'm going to send you a telegram. Otherwise, it's all certain because my boss always listens to my recommendations. So money is not a problem because we know where the market is, so no problem. So if I'm not going to buy it, then only I'll send you telegram. So just wait. So that was on Sundays, and then the Monday comes, and then Tuesday comes, and now the Wednesday is the final day. So they're waiting. The telegram didn't come, so that means they're very happy, very happy. As the time goes, usually the telegram comes at 5 o'clock. So the whole day they're like sweating, and he said, "What if the telegram comes? Then we are done, and the whole business is all flat." So he said 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 4:30, 4:45. They are shaking. We hope the telegram doesn't come, but the telegram comes 5 minutes before 5. The guy brings in the telegram. So nobody wanted to get up and find the bad news. So Pandit says, "Mullah, you go." So Mullah got up, he's sweating, his palms are sweating. He says, all this money is going to go down the drain. So finally, with the shaking hands, he opens the telegram. He says, "Good news, Pandit, your father is dead." So the telegram, at least it's not the bad. So all of a sudden, the dead father becomes a good news. If the telegram was from the salesman, then we were all done. So happiness and unhappiness are the states of mind. So, but we keep on running after finding the happiness, thinking that if I have this, I'll be happy. If I don't have this, I'll be happy. So our race for looking for happiness never ends. Till the last moments of the life even. Mullah Nasruddin got older. His daughter was also getting almost 30, 31, could not get married. So finally, not looking for any proper relationship in the society, so they decided to put an advertisement into the paper. So they say, beautiful looking girl, looking for a matching handsome man, and the girl likes mountain climbing, so preferably somebody who is adventurous would be preferred, this and that. So they waited, the advertisement goes out, the PO box, just reply on the PO box, so address was never given. So after 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, nothing comes in. So finally one reply comes in, so the daughter gets excited. The daughter goes out into the mailbox and gets the letter, opens the letter, and then the mom comes out and mom says, let me see. Who is that? He says, "Mom, it's better that you don't see." He says, "What do you mean? I also took a lot of time and efforts in giving this advertisement." He says, "If you really insist, look at it. It was Mullah Nasruddin applying for, looking for suitable. Even to that age, we are looking for a relationship." So
Hope is always there.
we need awareness to see where we're going in life. What are we going after? What are we running after? Is this really the happiness? Is this really the something? So all our happinesses and unhappinesses and all those are locked in the 4 dimensions: height, width, depth, and the 4th being the time. The time is the element that messes up everything. We want only 3 dimensions. We like a beautiful girl, we want her to stay that way forever. We want such and such money, we don't want that to disappear. The time changes everything. So the 4th dimension is really what messes up everything, but we don't realize because we are so into it. We are really brainwashed by the materialism, the Maya, so we cannot be aware. Lack of awareness makes us go run towards the sansar. So Mahavir says that anything that is done with awareness, you are doing brahmacharya. You are with Brahma. Mahavir, Krishna, Buddha gave the fifth dimension. Fifth dimension is to be able to observe everything, witnessing, the power of observation, drashta drashti, ability to see all these changes. That nobody had a concept of. Even Einstein always said that this is sapekshvad, the theory of relativity. Everything is relative, time is relative, space is relative, everything is relative. Time is material, it can be stretched. Space is material, it can be stretched, it can be warped. The whole universe is warped. All the vision that we're having, but because of the gravity, that the vision of the distant galaxies that's coming in, it's all sidetracked so much because of the vision. The star could be all the way over here, but to us it will look over there. We all talk the same language because we have the same eyes and we have the same perceptibility. So we don't think, but the whole universe is warped. The space is warped. We think there is nothing there, but it is there. So the relativity is the theory proposed by Einstein, but the fifth dimension is the spiritual dimension that's never there. So the theory of spirituality is that if there are things are moving, if the changes are happening, there has to be a steady source. A steadiness has to be there. Sthita prajna state is where you can visualize these changes. And that sthita prajna state is ultimate goal of spirituality. To remain in that state where happiness is meaningless, unhappiness is meaningless. The existence in your own swarup or swabhav is the ultimate journey. That's where the spirituality will end. If you really look at the details, all the great minds think alike. If you really say that I am Hindu and you are Jain, you are the most stupid. If you really apply and really go deep into all the teachings of Mahavir and Krishna and all that, they are saying the same thing. For example, Mahavir says you need awareness. You need awareness to delineate every single action that you're doing. You apply your awareness and be aware of what you're doing. Now Krishna says the same thing. Mai sarvani karmani. Offer all the karmas to me. Now, he's not talking about the statue of Krishna. He's talking about the Krishna consciousness. And Mahavir says the same thing. What is awareness? Awareness is a product of the ultimate infinite consciousness. So, whether you remember Krishna consciousness or you be aware, it's one and the same thing. Krishna says, Mai sarvani karmani, samnyasya adhyatma chetasa. So, do every action but offer it to me. And do the sannyasa. Get away from the objects of pleasure. Do adhyatma. Adhyatma is connect yourself. Chetasa is your chetana. So put it in a vertical axis where all your chetana just focuses only on the higher self. And nirasi nirmamo bhutva. Bhutva is a being, person. So nirashi, do not expect anything in the future. Asha. Asha is leading into the future. Asha creates the future. To create the future, you need time. When you need time, you are not transcending. When you transcend, you don't need time. So nirashi, do not worry about the future. Nirmamo, mamatva, your ego. Give up all the ego that you are the doer, like Vijayabhai said. Doership is a crime when it comes to Krishna's teaching. Same thing, right? So nirashi nirmamo bhutva yudhyashva vigata jvaraha. Fight, Arjun, fight without grief. Vigata means without, jvara is grief. So do not panic, just do your duty and do every single action but offer it to me. So if you really go into the depth of the teachings, we find so many similarities. So differences are only the people who have not reached there. The differences should not exist once you go into the infinite space. two people speaking at the infinite level. Where are the differences? There are no differences. So Mahavir might have been against Hinduism the way it was prescribed at that time. Mahavir was against Bhagwan, but he's not against Bhagavata. He is not against the divinity. The divinity is the realization. So it's the ultimate, is the awareness that opens up, awakeness that opens up within you. If a person comes to Buddha with his or her problems, that these are the causes of my suffering, Buddha says, I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to make you Buddha, to be the one who is awakened. So be awakened. That's the message, ultimate message of spirituality. If you bring your broken doll to Buddha and he says, Buddha, fix this for me. Buddha says, I am not here to fix your doll and make you happy. I'm here to make you realize that this is doll, it's not real. Then that is our problem. Our egos, we're dealing with the material things which we want to hold in forever. We're living an illusory life, and then when it doesn't work out the way we want, we go to the temple, we bow down, Krishna, fix this for me and fix that for me. Krishna says, I want you to be conscious. I want you to be aware. Synchronize with my consciousness. Don't ask for random material things. You are insulting me. But we do it all the time. That is an everyday event. I just talked to my mom. Right now there are pollution. The Dhiravasi's pollution is going on. And she was, even my mom at the age of 85 realizes the whole Ahmedabad Jain society is crazy. He says, we have Maharaj, Sadhu, he comes in our apartment. He doesn't have legs. So first factor, sympathy factor always comes in, right? So people go and now he has in white clothes and everything, people bow down. And mom says they give 30,000 rupees so that their wishes come fulfilled. They come and they bow down to him and offer all the money. And the guy has so much money, has built such a big bungalows for himself and his daughter and everything. But then he goes to someone else because his daughter is not married and cannot find the right match. So my mom says that how come he cannot find the match for his own daughter? How come he cannot have a full set of legs when he has no legs, and yet he charges 30,000 rupees? But there are people. And this is the sad state of the whole India, or whole religious, I would say the whole world. People do the same thing, whether they are in the churches or Gurudwara or something. Looks like the whole world is living in a spell. And very few people have realized that the fifth dimension exists. It does exist, and that's why we have living proof is Mahavir, Buddha, Krishna, everybody. So we should try to go in that direction. So for Mahavir, dharma is your svabhav. But he also gives another definition of the path that you can take to reach to your svabhav. Saying that yes, being in a svabhav or swarup is your dharma, but going there is another story. Because the path is very arduous and is very treacherous. Our vrittis, vasanas, they come in the way. The thoughts, likes, dislikes, it's like a continuous hurricanes going on in our head. And to be able to sift all these things and look through to your shunya state is very difficult. So Mahavir gives the path. And for him, ahimsa, sanyam and tap. For him, this is where the discussion starts. The discussions will get very deep, so it requires a lot of attention and regular meditation. Then only we can understand what he really meant. So if you equate ahimsa as your soul, sanyam as your prana, and tap as your body. So that's for spiritual discussion purpose. Tap will be the most peripheral, which will be your actions in the outside world. But sanyam is internal. Even though nobody knows that, you know that. Only the snake knows his legs. Whether you have sanyam or not, within you only you can tell. So Mahavir's force is from ahimsa to sanyam to tap, not reverse. But the whole Jain community has been doing is totally reverse. Mahavir did fasting for this many days, so doing fasting will reach to the soul. It does not happen. Everything has to spring from within. But for Mahavir, ahimsa is the soul of everything. If you look at the so many other religions, each religion has a different way of prescribing the path to reach to your soul. Some will say Manav Dharma, somebody says Seva, somebody says worshipping, somebody says Bhakti, whatever. But there is only one religion in the whole world where the focus is on ahimsa. The question is, what is ahimsa? The definition of ahimsa is also something which is widely misunderstood by pretty much everyone, especially the Jain community. If you ask Jains, what is ahimsa? Oh, not to kill someone. That would be very simple, because killing someone in the material world is an outside act. If you have to define something big like a soul and you have to use an outside help, it's a very poor definition. And that would be very easy. And then it would be very easy to understand Mahavir. But Mahavir is such a soul, is a divine soul who has reached to such a high depth. He knows, just like Krishna, that body does not die. Body dies, the soul never dies. So when the body dies, you shift into the next gear and you pick up another life, just like you change your clothes. It's all well written in Gita. The same way Mahavir knows that killing an ant is not really killing. He knows there is no death. At the soul level, there is no death. So if Mahavir meant only that killing someone is hinsa, then it would be very superficial definition. So Mahavir goes very deep into the ahimsa. What is ahimsa? The definition of ahimsa is very thought-provoking, the way Mahavir has said. So this is where our journey can start, at the soul level. And only once we understand the true meaning of ahimsa, then only sanyam can come. And only then tap will have a meaning. And then only moksha and nirvana will follow. So why does Mahavir gives so much importance to ahimsa? So swabhav being internal, and if that is our destination, the dust that we have gathered over so many lives is lying on the pure and divine soul. We have to act on our own inner psyche. For that, Mahavir says you have to go within. Then only you will realize how much dust has been piling up within on your own soul. And then only your acharan ultimately can change. So Mahavir knows that killing someone, you are really not killing anyone. The same way, he says that making somebody unhappy is also useless. Killing someone is useless. Making someone unhappy is useless. Making someone happy is also useless. So our efforts are always there when we living in our day-to-day life, either to make someone happy or make someone unhappy. The people that we like, we want to make them happy. The people that we don't like, we want to make them unhappy. If we have argument with someone, we want to make sure that the guy leaves at the end of the argument, leaves offended, so that he proved wrong and we proved right. Basically, we are expanding our ego and we are cutting into his ego. So obviously the guy is gonna get hurt until he finds someone else where he can win and expand his ego again. Ego is an illusory thing that we talked about. So ego, even though it's not visible, it's not seeable, it's not touchable, but we all know it exists. So ego is just as material as a weapon, as a sword. Just the way you can kill someone with a sword, you can also hurt someone with your thoughts, with your ideas. All the talks that you do to someone, to hurt someone with the intention of hurting someone, is also hinsa. So Mahavir says that you search for yourself whether happiness that you have at the end of that argument, the person who lost the argument left unhappy, and the person who won the argument, became happy. The happiness was because of the winning over someone else, and the unhappiness was because of losing with someone else. So the wars do not have to be fought in the battlegrounds. At a microscopic level, we are fighting battles all the time. Mullah Nasruddin's son was going into the school, and the topic was about the world wars. He says, which was the biggest world war ever fought? So everybody was asked. Mullah Nasruddin's son was also asked. He says, I know the answer, but I'm not going to give it. He says, why? He says, because the biggest battle I've been told not to talk about. He says, which one is that? He says, that happens between my mom and dad all the time. So at every microscopic level, even in our day-to-day relationship, we are always fighting battles. At the ideas level, at the beliefs level, my belief versus your belief, my idea versus your ideas. There is no congruity. We are not really mixing with each other, but we are always trying to destroy somebody else so that my idea becomes more appealable to me. So for my existence, I'm ready to insult someone or defeat someone. So Mahavir says, even with all that, person has his own choice to be happy or not to be happy. If the arguments did not really bother him, then he will stay. So, well, it's okay. That's the way you think. This is the way I think. He may leave. Your intention may be to hurt him and create unhappiness for him. It may not work. Alcohol, same Heineken bottle, may be making you happy, but the same bottle, if was carrying the happiness, would make everybody happy. But somebody who does not drink does not work for him. So if the happiness was in the bottle, then yes, that would make sense. So you were destined to be happy with Heineken, other person was not. So your inner state is the state that decides whether you're happy or not. So if somebody does not want to be happy, even if you try, you cannot be happy. I always give an example. Try buying something for your teenage son or daughter. He says, Dad, is that what you buy? Come on, let me buy. Yes. Our ideas change. Our definitions of happiness change. So if we buy something in the house and it breaks in 2 days, then we are very unhappy. Because the previous thing that we replaced, say you bought a pot or something like that and it broke in 2 days, our expectation that this has to last for a long time, we were set prime to become unhappy when the thing will break. If it broke at the end of use of 6 months or a year, then we would have no problem. So our state of mind decides whether any event that happens outside, whether we become happy or unhappy. But you may think that why would somebody want to be unhappy? Well, there are a lot of things to be gained by being unhappy also. There are people who want to remain unhappy because that unhappiness itself becomes something to talk about. They get together and they keep on talking about their unhappinesses. They even go to the doctors. I get this all the time. Doc, I have this, I have this, I have that. They have a laundry list of things. But they don't want to accept that there is nothing wrong. And all the tests, everything comes back normal. But they are still unhappy. They says, Doc, with all the complaints that I gave you, there is nothing there? I said, no, I'm sorry. He says, send me to a specialist. Maybe he will find something. So he wants to find something out of nothing. And then only he might become happy if you give him some diagnosis. So sometimes we give diagnosis of fibromyalgia, which is a made-up diet. And then the guy gets caught up into the therapies and this and that and non-steroidals and keeps the pharmacist happy and physical therapist happy. And he said, Doc, you made a great diagnosis. I had a patient like that. She left. She lives in Pennsylvania. She must have left about 15 years. She used to be a neighbor. And she still writes me, Doc, that was a great diagnosis you made. And she's still happy. And the therapy for that is antidepressant. So we know that. But that's the story. I have a friend. He's very rich. And he came here. He was going through the daughter's wedding and a lot of stress and this and that and all that. And he says, Srenik, there is something wrong. There is something wrong. I said, come on, there is nothing. All the tests are... No. finally he had to hook up with the Princeton the executive physical, $10,000 for a physical. He had to stay there 3 nights. They keep you in a 5-star hotel, $10,000, everything. Finally, he said, even the day before he comes to me, he says, should I go? I said, you got to go. I said, you go. That $10,000, he doesn't care. He has a lot of money. He said, it'll be worth spent. Now he's happy everything came back all right. And they do all this esoteric stuff that was not even necessary. So unhappiness also becomes part of your ego. And that can be a weapon to gain importance with everybody else. I did an internship in Saroda, which is a village near Dholka. So every doctor has to do that for 3 months. You have to stay in a village and serve the poor. And so they have a clinic there you go, and you commute like once a week back and forth between Ahmedabad. And so you take the medications, whatever you need, supplies, and you buy it, and then whenever they come, the charge was 5 rupees, and you give them whatever they need for and all that. So in the beginning, I used to just prescribe whatever was necessary, maybe 1 or 2 pills, and sometimes I say, it's a virus, you don't need anything. After 2 or 3 weeks, I was becoming so unpopular. So Mukhya calls me, he says, Doc, this is not good. You got to give them at least 5 pills. They equate 5 rupees with 5 pills. I said, but why? He said, it's not. He says, Doc, I don't care. You buy vitamins or whatever, but and make sure they're all different color, because they have to be different color. Then only they believe that it's a different medication. So I had to go into the market, and literally there were like, for 1 rupee, there were like 1,000 pills. That cheap pills. So you can imagine what was in those pills.
Chopstick.
Right. So whatever was there, I had to buy. And then once I started giving 5 pills for 5 rupees, then I said, this doctor is good.
We used to give sterile water injection.
Right, there you go, just to make them happy, right?
Injection will get
So,
You're right. We had a primary care doctor. He
Right.
had stethoscope different colors.
Right.
Red color
Uh-huh.
charge was different. Green color charge was different. This is true story.
I'm sure.
Don't give a pill.
You make a powder of it. He doesn't know what.
So-
Now you guys know what doctor does, you know. They're
So
taking
the
the
whole,
secrets out.
and you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice, because I cannot be in a sthita prajna state at that time. If I am, then I'm not a good doctor.
Act you must.
Right.
That's what Krishna
Right.
says.
So we are caught up in happiness and unhappiness. At any desperate measures, we want to be happy. But that happiness and unhappiness has to be built into the material world. Going out of the material, we have never thought about it. My father died, right? One of my patients came in, and she came with her husband, and she says, I'm really sorry about your father's loss. And she, out of all I had taught her, she has Gita. I had given her Gita, and she understood the whole concept, and she practiced, she does yoga also, and everything. And she came and I said, yeah, but I mean, events happen. What can you do? No, doc, but you must be sorry, right? I said, yeah, I mean, it happens, but I'm okay now. But so the husband is laughing. He says, she wants you to be unhappy. She cannot stand it that you are not unhappy. I said, it's not that I'm not unhappy, but events happen, and after all, I mean, what can... No, but... I said, okay, I'm really unhappy. Okay, now you don't. So now she's happy. So she wants me to be playing with the doll again, and the same circle again goes on.
She wants the basis of sympathy, you know.
Right, exactly. So that's why the people hated Mahavir and Buddha and Jesus, because they remained sthita prajna. They had reached to the 5th dimension, and they looked at the whole world in an indifferent way. For them, happiness didn't mean anything, unhappiness didn't mean anything. Remaining in a vitarag state, which is the word coined by Mahavir, in a steady state, sthita prajna state, was the ultimate joy and ultimate happiness. But people could not know that. When Jesus said that if somebody slaps you on the cheek, you turn your other cheek, they couldn't stand it. They wanted him to respond. If he had responded, he would have been one of them. Then we'd have been fine. Then you can, stay on the dais forever and keep on preaching us for the rest of your life. Then all the followers will follow you because you are a traditional guru. Then it's okay. Then it's no problem. But if anything changes, they could not stand it, that how come you don't respond? So he was killed. Once, a guy came in to meet, see Osho. He says, well, I have heard a lot of things about you, and I wanted to meet you personally, and I wanted to take a decision whether to follow you and take a sannyas and all that. She says, fine, come and see me. Now, they must have spent about half an hour. All the time, he kept on looking at his shoes. Osho was wearing extraordinary shoes, very expensive shoes at that time. At the end of 30 minutes, the guy, only thing he got out of it was, he says, sadhu should not be wearing shoes like that. I don't think you can be a good sadhu who has not gone into, sannyas state. You are still attached to all these things. You cannot be my guru. His once in a lifetime chance was gone. So we define even gurus based on our material ideas. So how can we progress? We have to go above all these things and take sannyas in our mind level, and we can still perform in a day-to-day life, but staying in the fifth dimensional state, it's not going to be possible if we don't come out with our ideas. The same way, if person decides to be happy, you cannot make him unhappy either, because happiness is his decision. Mahavir, you cannot make him unhappy. Iron nails were pierced in his ears by the shepherds because he could not pay attention to his cows. But all he did was come out of the meditation and smiled. The name Shranik came from Bimbisar. Bimbisar was an ancient king. His wife was Chela Devi, and Chela Devi was heavily into Jainism, and she always said that Jain Munis are always in a vitrak state. Nothing bothers them. Whatever you do to them, they will always smile. Their inner state is always in an equilibrium. So Bimbisar was not a traditional guy. He wanted to test these Jain monks. So he said, okay, show me your best Jain monk. And he went there and threw the dust on them. This is a story. Threw the snakes at them and everything. But the Jain Muni was in a deep meditation trance state. After 45 minutes, an hour, he came out and he just smiled. And Bimbisar was so impressed. He says, now I really got the proof how the Jain Munis can be in a vitrak state. So he really bowed down to the Jain Muni. He converted himself to be a Jain, and he changed his name to Shranik. So Bimbisar became Shranik. So, and the name meant because he organized the religions all over the India, and Shrani is the divisions. Ka means Karnar. So he really organized the Jain religion so well, so he was called Shranik, and that's how. So, so happiness is also your state of mind. So Mahavir says that it's up to you whether to be happy or not. And at the same time, everyone else also has their own freedom to choose their happiness or unhappiness. Your efforts to make them unhappy, meaning you are taking away their freedom. So for Mahavir to stay in his own state and not moving an inch even, and whatever is happening in the surrounding his life, accept it to the 100% as the work of Niyati. Every ant, every person who is living around you has accumulated their karmas over the period of centuries and multiple lives, and they are carrying their vrittis and vasanas. By your efforts, you are not going to be able to change their course. Only it will make their life miserable. The only way they're going to change is by their inner self. When their instinct will rise up and they will change themselves, and every action they will do, ultimately they will realize their own mistakes and they will rise. The only thing you can do is exist with minimum interference with the surrounding world as if you don't exist. Mahavir says that I want to sit under the tree and so that when I leave, the birds don't even know that I sat under the tree. I want to walk so the surrounding grass does not even know that I walked. He wants to leave no footprints and no footmarks in the rest of the life that he lives after he reached the state of Vitrag. So when we think that I want to make someone unhappy, we are exercising our ego, because we know that sansar is the only source of happiness. So at the same time, when I want to make someone unhappy and I am being the part of that sansar, I want to, by proving him wrong, I'm taking away, I'm hurting his ego. And ego is what? Your firm belief that sansar is the source of pleasure. Your belief that doll is real. So when I am trying to make you unhappy, I'm trying to break your doll. So when I'm trying to break your doll, I'm just as confused as you are, because before the argument started, you were having a good time because you had won the previous argument, of course. So for you, sansar was best until I came along and I broke your ideas about such and such belief or whatever. I made you got insulted. So all of a sudden, sansar is unhappy for you. So your doll is broken. So what is this? It's a game of children. So when I try to insult you, I'm also believing that sansar is real, and making you suffer in the sansar is also real. Mahavir says sansar is not real at all. Whether you win the argument or you lose the argument, you both are losers, because you both think sansar is a real doll. But Mahavir says it's a fake doll. Reality is something else. Reality is something that gives rise to this beautiful life, and where the beautiful life absorbed back into it. There is a bigger picture. He wants you to come out of all these things. And when I want to kill someone, that's my ultimate wish, that your source of pleasure I'm taking away. So when I believe that sansar is your ultimate source of pleasure, when I kill you, then I definitely make sure that you cannot argue with me anymore. I'm talking about psychology, right? So in the ultimate, the effect that it shows your inner state of mind, that you yourself are confused about life. It's like when you want somebody's attention, right? And you dress up in such and such way, and I want people to notice at me, right? So I dress up in such a way that people look at me, oh, where did you get this from? How did you, oh, you look so nice, but I don't look good. In their own mind, they know that. So my trying to make look better is a weapon that I'm using to make you look inferior, but we both are playing the games of sansar. So we both are in the same boat. So I'm utilizing you, who is looking inferior, so that I look superior. So everything is built into the sansar. We all are confused. So even before I left the house, I was already attracted by the world to give me that attention, so I feel good and I look good. So for me, the source was already sansar. I was already believing that when I go to that party or such an event or whatever, people are going to look at me, I'm going to feel good. It's universal. At least 50% of the universe thinks that way, right?
More than that.
Well, no, I said females versus males. Females more than males, of course. But males have the same. They have other weapons.
Yeah.
They have their ego and intellect, that I can argue, I know about this, I read up on the CNN, or I read about on this scripture. So they have different weapons. What's the difference? When I read up and discuss my knowledge with someone else and prove somebody inferior, before I left the house, I read up such and such book or such and such source or whatever, and I'm walking around with that ego and I'm ready to vomit it out to someone and make them realize that you don't know this. So same thing. So I'm confused, they are confused, and Mahavir says you both are confused. So the fifth dimension, the Vitrag state, is ultimately, so Mahavir is saying that your efforts to make somebody unhappy is violence. Your efforts to make someone happy is also violence. And of course, killing someone else is also violence. But he knows that killing is not real because there is no killing, there is no death. But when you believe that by killing someone, you put an end to their expansion of the ego, that means you are also confused. So that means the violence that you're committing out of illusion. You are living at the Maya state and you lost out. Mahavir says anything that is done without awareness is abrahmacharya. Anything that is done with awareness is brahmacharya. So that's where we'll stop. And again, with merging everything together, everything done with awareness, it takes you farther backwards and make you realize this is child's play that we're doing. And we're feeling good about winning, we're feeling bad about losing. All this is useless. So let's come out of all these things, practice the awareness, and ultimately, hopefully, we'll all reach there. So much for today. Battery died?
About to.
Oh, perfect.
No, it hasn't died yet. But
There
this
is no
doesn't
death.
stop.
There
This
is no
doesn't.
death.
No, but this doesn't stop actually.
Click that
Huh? This one?
message. Clear the pop-up. Yeah.